fun facts about these guys. So Jake here loves bald eagle. Jason has a dog named Yoshi who's probably accompanying him everywhere except here, I guess. Jake loves his mom's ginger snap cookies. You never got us some, Jake. When are we getting?
Soon.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are witnesses. I'm getting some soon. And Jason, you love special of the day. Like, what exactly do you mean by that?
You'll usually go for what the chef recommends. They're always using the good seasonal stuff. So that's the,
Awesome.
trick.
Awesome. And Jake here flew a plane, was behind a motorboat, and then operated a tractor before he started driving. That's fun.
That's right.
That's awesome. And then he also feels that we as a team should be diving with the sharks for a good team activity. And he meant that with all seriousness, I think.
It's going to happen.
Oh my God. Okay, and Jason here wants to learn how to speak French, which is awesome. And then apparently Jake's really good at basketball. He's so good that he ended up scoring 1 point of 10 games when he was in middle school, and that's when he decided that basketball was not a career he was going to move forward with. And then Jason has a very interesting story to share. I think he had a Japanese language snafu. He was then going to propose to his then girlfriend, who's now his wife, and ask her if it would be okay for him to call her girlfriend, but ended up asking something along the lines of, is it okay for me to have multiple girlfriends? Has your Japanese improved since?
It's one of those little things where you just get like a small grammatical error wrong and it changes the meaning altogether.
I know how that goes.
I'll never forget that Japanese lesson.
Good luck learning Japanese and good luck learning French. Jake and Jason, the stage is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Megha, for that very colorful and revealing introduction. And a very special thank you to each and every one of you here this afternoon. Jason and I have been looking forward to giving this presentation for quite some time. I just really want to thank you for joining us at Summit, for being here for this presentation. It's such a privilege to be here with you. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time. My name is Jake Brereton, and this is Jason Wong. Today, we're going to be giving you a sneak peek into how Atlassian teams use Jira Software to build, track, and ship Atlassian products smarter and faster. Collectively, Jason and I have spent over 10 years inside Jira. About 2/3 of that time has been at Atlassian on the Jira team. We were end users of the product as well. So as you can imagine, over a decade, we've interviewed hundreds of administrators. We've seen hundreds of instances, and we've spoken to hundreds of Jira users. And if there's one common thread that runs through all this experience, it's that every single Jira use case is truly unique. No two teams in the world are the same, and so no two Jira instances are the same. And this is exactly why we've built the product to be so customizable. As most of you in this room know, Jira is designed to mold to the shape of your team and the way that it works best. And this is absolutely no different for Atlassian teams. We're firm believers in dogfooding our own products. And every team in Atlassian uses our products a little bit differently. They use our tools in a way that makes their particular team more efficient and effective. So today, Jason and I are here to give you a sneak peek into the way 5 Atlassian teams have customized and optimized Jira Software to mold to their specific use case. While it's true that no two teams are the same, we're hoping that each of you will leave here today with at least one new idea from learning how 5 of our teams around the world are pushing Jira Software to the limit. Now, when I say around the world, I mean exactly that. Atlassian currently has 12 offices in 6 countries across the globe. It's quite a few different time zones to manage, especially when you consider that Atlassian makes 13 tools. And the teams that build and support these tools, they're mostly distributed. And massive oceans between teams, they're not our only challenge. Over the past decade, Atlassian has scaled to more than 2,500 employees globally. Like so many of you and your teams, this scale has demanded that we adapt, and fast. So how do 2,500 Atlassians across 12 offices around the globe plan, track, and ship software? Hopefully you've guessed it by now. with Jira Software. To date, Atlassian has over 20 active Jira Software instances that are used for literally everything. From software development to finance, strategy to IT, Jira Software, Jira Service Desk, and Jira Core provide one common language throughout our entire organization. Now, a minute ago, I told you that we were big fans of dog fooding. Let me give you an example. The aptly named JDog is the Jira Software dog fooding instance. It's used by the majority of the Jira team. As of 3 weeks ago, JDog is home to 337 projects, 468 custom workflows, 918 boards, and over 836,000 Jira tickets. Now, to put this number in perspective, if you were to file 100 tickets a day, it would take you 23 years to fill an instance this size. And keep in mind, JDog is only one of 20 instances that we use. So as you can see, when I say our internal teams rely heavily on Jira Software to plan, track, and ship our software, and that we love to push our products to the limit, this isn't just a convenient talking point for our presentation. Atlassians live in Jira. But now that you've had a quick bird's eye view of how Jira usage looks across all of Atlassian, let's jump into the first of our 5 team stories, how the Cloud X team uses Jira Software to deliver time-sensitive projects in an agile fashion. To tell that story, I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
Thanks, Jake. How are we doing? Time-sensitive project. Date-driven development's got to be one of the most unpopular ways to try and motivate a team. Many people are going to call out, hey, that's an anti-pattern, right? And look, time is of the essence. Time's something you can't get back, and we all have to deal with it. But I think the main problem that happens with dates, when you have to deliver to dates, is that the date becomes everything. And that's the main thing that's against the sort of spirit of Agile, right? Like it becomes bigger than the customer. And so one thing you've got to watch out for. And one thing I really liked about this team, in that they didn't let it take over the project, they just treated it like something else, just like another feature that they've got to deliver. I'd like to introduce you to the CloudX team from Atlassian Identity. They look after our Atlassian IDs, so how we log in users. And they often come across these kind of projects where they have to deliver to a deadline due to compliance reasons, and they're pretty good at it. Else, I guess, I wouldn't be able to tell this story. So you've got a deadline to hit, scope sort of well known, those sort of projects. What's the first thing you do? And the advice from the team is just to get in there and start working on it. Start spiking as soon as you can. Don't worry about setting up any sort of fancy workflows or doing estimation or any of that sort of stuff. And you can see what the team did. They just went up to a whiteboard and just started drawing something interesting. Running basically Kanban here with some post-it notes. Cutting out sharks to show who's assigned the things, and when things get done, throwing them up on the beach. But the real thing is like get in there, get some experience. And once the team got going and starting to understand the broader scope of what they needed to get done to deliver this on time, they started bringing a bit more structure into place. As you can see here now, they're starting to show what the work looks like across sprints going forward and starting to theme things into tracks. And what this allowed the team to do was start seeing all the things they need to get done, right? And when things started slipping or when things changed, they could see that impact and that knock-on effect. It's hard to see in this photograph as well, but they started using Jira here as well because there's just so much stuff to capture. There are little Jira ticket issues written on each of those post-it notes. So the team kept going. They really took this sort of physical wallboarding to town. This time, what they're trying to show and introduce to their practice is dependency mapping. So those green paths where they run into each other are showing hard dependencies. So obviously you need to get those things done before you can even go past those that junction. And then they've got little black dotted lines to show soft dependencies. And then throughout, they sort of themed this with little Pokemons, which represent feature milestones, pretty much epics. And when they burnt down to those, they pulled out a Pokeball and made sure they went and had some sort of celebration. And when they got to their final goal, again, another celebration, probably of a bigger magnitude. But the key thing the team said was, don't just show progress by burning down stuff. You know, we're all into metrics. Make sure that progress is celebrated. And so there are digital reflections for all of this work. They're not just sitting on a physical wallboard. And that's just because physical wallboards, they're great when the team's together, but of course they're super local, so it's really hard to keep the rest of the business informed of what's going on, and things can sort of get lost, right? So you want to have that track, that record, which is why they put things into Jira, making sure they're capturing the details. And as they got through, they did start implementing some more fine-grained workflows as well. And of course, Jira Software Board. What you're seeing here are swim lanes by epics, pretty much those little monsters, Pokemon monsters, and so they can see the cards reflected again on those physical wallboards using a digital board here in Jira Software. So the takeaways for the team is, for this kind of project, again, deadline, scope more or less well known, is to not start with estimation. It's really about investigation over estimation, because if you start with estimation, you're not going to give an accurate estimate, because you don't have experience trying to work through the projects, and you're probably going to set yourself up for some sort of like expectations your team can't deliver. So not a good starting point. Just get in there, spike the code, get some experience. Now, estimation is popular because it does get the team talking about technical approaches, like why did you give that a 3 versus a 5 or an 8, and you get some sort of, you get some ideas about how you might do things more efficiently or better for the customer. The team still got the benefit of doing that by doing a QA kickoff. And a QA kickoff is when we get together before we run a sprint to talk about the expected behaviors we want to see from the working software on the other side of the sprint. And through this, the team was able to get the benefits of talking about different technical approaches. And so the team just gets on with it, gets a real handle, some real solid experience on the scope and what they're up against. And this gave them some really genuine talking points when it came to having frank conversations with stakeholders about progress. Now, a good framework typically for this kind of project is the iron triangle, right? Like scope, people, time, they're all sort of like interlocked. And this project, time is not negotiable, so you can maybe play around with the scope and the people on the project. So by having this experience, you can really have some really good conversations with your stakeholders. The earlier the better, so that you can manage better your trajectory towards delivering this project on time. And not to forget, the project's not over until it's over. There are always monsters lurking in there, and you want to keep making sure that you're triggering this review of progress and risk all the time until you actually get it done. So these kind of practices, I think it's quite important to talk about how we share them as well. And so at Atlassian, we like to encourage teams to develop or devise new traditions that work for them and to share them with other teams so other teams can decide whether that's something that might be a good idea for them to pick up. The Atlassian Identity team had this tradition called the Agile Slam, which is a take on the Poetry Slam where you get in front of people and share through experience. And that's how this story was spread throughout the company. The physical wallboards, obviously, you get people walking past, taking note of things. Really important to take care of that. I know we're all in the digital economy, but the workplace matters a huge amount. So take some time, work with your designers, get some space up there, even their help to make it look really striking, and engage people with the things you want to keep top of mind. And lastly, making sure we're not all about the metrics and everything. It's got to have some fun, some focus on visible progress through celebration. So that was a story about delivering the time-sensitive project with fairly well-known scope. We're going to mix it up a bit now. Jake's going to bring a story from our web experiments team, who run experiments to actually figure out scope and what the right thing is to build. And so they've got this story about how they've used Jira Software to scale up demands in their team so that they can manage how they run and analyze web experiments. Over to you, Jake.
Thanks, Jason. So now I'd like to introduce you to our web experimentation team. Now, right off the bat, you'll notice two things. The first is that they're wearing some incredible Confluence Hawaiian button-downs. And the second is that they're a 5-person team, 5 people for the entire company. Bonus points if you can pick out the member who was photoshopped in. Now, I'm sure you can imagine how many experiment ideas are generated in a data-driven company like Atlassian with over 2,500 inquisitive minds. And yet, every web experiment filed ultimately falls to one of these 5 gentlemen. Well, every experiment team loves a steady stream of new ideas. The team's original process for handling these requests simply was not scaling. The team not only had to triage dozens of new ideas every week, but then had to turn around and build, run, and analyze those experiments. And if that wasn't enough, what was really time-consuming was having dozens of stakeholders asking them questions like, where's my experiment in the process? Is it going to be successful? Is it statistically significant? And so on. Now, if you'll excuse my poor funnel analogy here, this team's funnel was literally overflowing with new ideas, and they were drowning in questions from stakeholders about each and every one. So they decided it was time to design a more scalable system. Now, just in case you don't believe me, here's an actual shot of the web experimentation Kanban board. As you can see, they're triaging and running dozens of experiments every week. Even though every experiment idea is unique, the team realized they had to create an end-to-end process that was more standardized and automated for everyone involved. And the first step of that process was to create a custom workflow. No longer would experiment ideas land at the bottom of an endless backlog that never had any hope of properly being groomed. In this workflow, you'll see there are distinct columns for items that have been triaged and prioritized. This workflow also provides clear visibility to external stakeholders on exactly where their particular experiment is in the process. So now, as an end user, when my experiment is filed, I can follow it through the entire process, from design through to analysis. Furthermore, ideas are no longer at risk of getting lost in a black hole. So next, the web experimentation team built a microservice that they nicknamed Mars. Mars is an automated system that connects multiple data streams and tools. It keeps information up to date in real time, and it surfaces relevant details of every experiment to all stakeholders. In short, Mars lets users self-service, and it frees the team up of distractions so they can do what they love to do, which is build and run experiments. So let's take a quick closer look. Whenever a new experiment is created in Optimizely, Mars detects the creation of this experiment and pairs it with its corresponding Jira ticket. To help Mars correctly match experiments, the team uses the same naming convention in Optimizely as exists in Jira. For example, experiment WAT598 in Optimizely relates to the original Jira ticket in their experiment instance, WAT598. It's pretty simple, but it works. Then, in Jira Software, as soon as Mars matches the optimized experiment with the correct ticket, Jira knows to automatically transition that ticket from triage to prioritized. And since it's clear that the experiment is going to be run at that point, Jira also assigns the ticket to one of the growth engineers, so they can immediately begin scoping the work. But that's not all Mars takes care of on behalf of the team. Once it's clear that an experiment is going to be run, Mars also generates a custom Confluence template. And again, it names it in a consistent naming convention, so it can be found by anyone in the organization. The experimentation template includes vital pieces of information, such as the hypothesis of the experiment, pre- and post-launch checklists, details on landing pages, and so on. Now, once all of these assets have been generated and linked, Mars pulls a simple web view together, and it surfaces information from Jira, Confluence, and Optimizely in real time. So whether your stakeholder is curious about how much traffic their experiment's received, or if the results are going to be conclusive, questions that were once fielded by members of the experiment team, they can now be answered in a completely self-service manner. This is incredibly powerful for scale. And because Mars is tracking every live experiment, it even puts it all together in a single timeline view, where stakeholders can see what experiments are being run, which are overlapping with their own, and what might be affecting them. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, Jake, you've just spent the last few minutes talking about a microservice. I thought I was in a presentation about Jira Software. Well, the last and most important part of this story is that Mars ties all this information together, everything that I just shared with you, into a custom URL, and then prints that URL back onto the experiment ticket for external stakeholders. It's the ultimate self-service model, and it's incredibly powerful. Now, any stakeholder in the business, regardless of where they are, they have access to all the same information that our web experimentation team does. And all they have to do to get access to that is go to the original ticket they filed. This process is not only way more scalable for the web experimentation team, but it empowers every stakeholder across the business to answer their own questions without slowing down anyone else. So if there's one thing you can take away from this story, it's the importance of having one single source of truth for every project. Especially as your team or company grows, there needs to be one place where everyone knows that all the information is accurate and up to date. Jira serves this role really well. First, with Jira, you can automate scalable process through setting defined workflows and then generating custom fields on the fly. In this story, all of the real-time information, all of the contextual information collected and generated by Mars becomes immediately accessible on the Jira ticket. This is game-changing. Secondly, Jira's APIs are robust, and they allow you to do just about anything. You can connect it with any product. While the web experimentation team got Mars talking to Jira using its APIs, that's just the beginning of what you can do. In fact, we just recently redesigned developer.atlassian.com with all new developer documentation. And finally, Jira's deep integration with Confluence provides complete context of whatever you're tracking in Jira. It's one page that's only one click away, and if there's ever a question about what's being done on the Jira ticket and why, or you need that next level of detail, Confluence is there. And in a self-service world, again, this context is incredibly important. So now that you've seen how the web experimentation team is using Jira Software to scale as they figure out what to build, I'm going to hand it back to Jason to discuss how features are then implemented, and specifically, how the Jira Software team uses a collection of boards to stay in sync across roles and teams. Jason.
Thanks, Jake. So this story comes from Jira Software, and it's something that has enabled us to gain a deep focus in each of the crafts, as well as promote context across the crafts. I'll show you how we've done this by hooking up a bunch of boards where each team and discipline goes deep and has a dedicated board to hone their craft. But at the same time, we connect them all together with a board to gain the wider context needed to drive awareness and continuously develop a shared understanding across the team. So first thing we did was talk to each of the teams and say, hey, why don't you just go and set up a board that completely is optimized to your workflow. Don't worry about the other teams for now. Set up your own workflows, use your own terminology, just go nuts, just optimize it for what you want to do. And we'll come back later and figure out how to join them together. So here's what the design team did. Now the design team doesn't really like opinionated workflows. They want things to be able to flow freely, very similar to like how they might track things with the sticky notes on a physical wallboard. So they're using our new agility boards, which let them do that. You can create columns, freely reorder them, create cards on there, move them around as you like. Now what's happening on this board, you might notice some of the descriptions on there, they're very high-level sort of feature items. And what the design team's tracking here are envisioning sort of items that will determine how features will look like when we go actually to implement them in future sprints. Our development team are using our Scrum boards. And what they want to do is have one backlog for Jira Software and be able to pull from that backlog into multiple teams running sprints in parallel. And so they're using our parallel sprints feature. You'll see this board here is for one team in Jira Software called the Octobots, working towards the M1.4 milestone. And if you click on the sprint switcher, we can switch over to another team who is running a sprint in parallel. Now you'll see a lot of the items in here, very technical tasks specific to the engineering craft. They want to break things down, track them, very much focusing on execution in this sprint, hitting that sprint goal. But what it lacks is that context, right? We can't see what our mates in design are doing who are a part of this team, and it wouldn't be natural to bring, say, a design card into your sprint. But again, it's very much optimized for the engineering team at this point. The marketing team use this board, and what they want to do is get as early as possible an idea of when things are coming from the roadmap and actually working their way through the design and development pipeline. So they can start getting, as early as possible, a view as to what they need to think about in terms of positioning, branding, and booking out time to promote it in the marketing calendar. As you get towards the right of this board, this is where the rubber hits the road. We now need to get into execution to launch go-to-market things such as writing blog posts or recording webinars so we can tell the story to customers about what the feature's about and tips on how to use it. So as we get further to that right, we also need to be very much in lockstep between the messages that are going out and the availability in product. Because you can imagine if we go out and announce something and it's not available in the product, a lot of people will be disappointed. So in its own right, this board has a lot of manual work to keep that synchronization going on, because a lot of the information about when things actually are shipped are on that engineering board, but that would bring a lot of noise if we try to put it in here for the marketing team. Now, the product managers want to get an overview, right? Because they're responsible for trying to get this balance right between customer value, business value, and making sure we're executing well. And so we just came up with this table, really easy to set up, to try and show on a per sprint level what the engineering team's working on, what the product team's working on, and designers as well. But this had a bit of a problem in that it was a little bit overly centralized, and the individuals in the teams didn't really get benefit of it, and so they didn't self-service, and the thing went out of date very quickly. So we needed to find a better solution, which is where I said we'd come back and try and figure out how to bring this all together. So I'm going to show you how we did that using our cross-board functionality in Jira Software. First thing we do is line up the workflows for each of those boards I've walked you through, side by side. And then at the very top, we've got this row there, Boardwalk. I'll come back to the name Boardwalk in a sec. But what we want to do is now define a common view. So we said across all the crafts, we're happy if we can see and track things when they're about to come up into to-do column, in progress, ready, and then shipped to customers. But as you can see, nothing lines up, and that's natural because we said go and figure out your own workflows. And so what we want to do next is a bit of a mapping exercise where we get each of the workflows and map them towards this universal meaning that all of the crafts can understand. Now to do this in Jira Software, you go to your board settings and to column management, and then you'll find this section here. We call this column the status mapping, and you can see we've named the columns by those universal statuses, and then what we've done is just dragged and dropped each of the individual statuses from all those workflows so that they map to the right column. And this is what you get. We've shown it as well, I guess, to put in swim lanes by teams, so we can discuss at a team level as well as across teams. But you can see now it's pulling in engineering issues, it's pulling in a view of what design's working on, it's pulling in a view of what marketing is promoting to customers. So we get that cross-context view. And the really cool thing about this is it doesn't need any maintenance because all the individuals in the team are working on their dedicated boards, and their updates get automatically consumed on this board. Now, the connected board is not really there just for visibility or just to update stakeholders. We're really trying to get the benefits of better interaction across the disciplines. So we need to be engaging and syncing more proactively, which is why we named this board by the way we use it, Boardwalk. So Boardwalk is an interactive session with a wider team where everyone can engage each other. And we started using it as a centralized view, very much like that table I showed you before, but we've moved away from that and started decentralizing it. It's really run by the teams for them to engage each other and the broader team as well. It also goes beyond the boards. Like when we run these, we literally do walk the boards, so all those cards. But what we've found is we need to bring those cards to life. So when we're looking at cards, say, from the designers who are looking and thinking about what the features might look like, we want them to show the mocks, talk about the design rationale, and involve the team in writing our future. And then when we look at other cards, which are about what's about to hit production, we want to see demos so that we can see how it's actually shaping out before we release it to customers. So it's the richer, proactive connections across the crafts and context that's been really useful. And we've set our boards to encourage this by having a board for every team so they can focus, connecting them together using the cross-project board functionality in Jira Software. And this also gets us a view that spans all the different phases of product development, right? From envisioning, building it, right through to go to market. And then having something like a Boardwalk tradition that you get together and communicate and engage each other. So having seen how we build features, we still need to show you how we work when we're running these features. We need to be running them reliably. And so the next story Jake is going to show you is about our site reliability engineering team and how they're working to minimize downtime when shit hits the fan.
Thanks, Chase. It's because our SREs are globally distributed. When I asked them for some pictures, they came from all over the globe, different time, different places. So I did the only natural thing, and for your viewing pleasure, I put them into a Brady Bunch matrix here. But the folks you see on the screen here, it's just a fraction of the team. Our SRE team is very large, and they're all around the world, and they're up 24/7 to make sure our systems are online and humming. So last year, the Bitbucket SRE team developed a standard automated process for dealing with severity 0, 1, and 2 incidents, or hot incidents. Over time, the team refined this process many times, and it finally became so bulletproof that it was rolled out to the entire organization. Today, I'm going to give you a sneak peek into that process. But before we jump in, let's do a bit of level setting. The first and most important point I'd like to make is that downtime happens to everyone. There's a reason that even the most advanced and sophisticated software products in the world, they talk in terms of nines. Even if you're guaranteeing 5 nines, those 26 seconds a year that you do go down could be absolutely catastrophic if they become 30 seconds, or 45 seconds, or 60 seconds. So, how you respond to this becomes critically important to your business. And the second related point I'd like to make is that in the world of SRE, preparation is everything. This Ben Franklin quote sums it up pretty well. Not having a system and process in place for when downtime strikes, it's kind of the equivalent of a firefighter not making sure the gas tank on his fire truck is full. Even if your team of firefighters is the best in the world, the time it's going to take you to fill up that gas tank, if there's a blaze, there's a good chance someone could die. And so it's vitally important to be prepared. In a severity incident, when there are a lot of unknowns, the best thing you can do is be 100% sure of your knowns. One of the easiest ways to do that is to automate the first stages of your response process. So let's take a look at how the Atlassian SRE team does exactly that. Now, not surprisingly, in a crisis situation, the basis of our response system consists of multiple integrated Atlassian tools. The SRE team uses Jira Software to track hot incidents through to resolution. They use Confluence to capture any and all context throughout the incident. And a combination of HipChat and BlueJeans, and soon to be Stride, I'm sure, for real-time, face-to-face communication. Finally, they use Status Page to keep all external stakeholders in the know during downtime. Now let's take a look at exactly what happens when an incident strikes. Whenever a hot ticket is created in OpsJ, which is the Jira Software instance used by our operations team, a microservice called IMA jumps into action. Now, IMA creates a Confluence page, a HipChat room, and a secure private BlueJeans bridge. Then it automatically connects all of these assets together and prints URLs for each back into a custom field right on the hot ticket. Once this process is complete, the hot ticket becomes the team's single source of truth throughout the entire incident. By tying all the necessary comms channels together, there's never any confusion when people are wondering where a call is taking place, or what critical decision needs to be made next, or what the status of the issue is. But IMA doesn't stop there. Once every communication channel is linked to the Jira ticket, it begins scanning support.atlassian.com for any incoming request that might be related to this hot ticket. Now, anyone swarming on the incident can see the total amount of people who are also publicly reporting this issue. And this number continues to update until the issue is resolved. It's the ultimate in peer pressure. At the same time, IMA also surfaces as much information as it knows about the incident in a custom area called dates. Dates provides all stakeholders with important dates surrounding the incident, such as when it was reported, when the incident occurred, when it was reported, the status of the last change, and so on. But this integration is hardly a one-way street. As team members swarm to solve the hot issue, every action they're taking in Jira Software and Confluence is automatically piped into the team's dedicated HipChat room. This means everyone has up-to-the-second context, and the entire team has one place to work in real time until the issue's fixed. And to be 100% sure no one misses a beat, HipChat automatically pulls anyone who interacts with the hot ticket into the HipChat room. So here's a screenshot of the SRE team's hot incident Confluence template, which has been fully customized to map to Atlassian best practices. Throughout the incident, the team uses this space to capture big-ticket items as they swarm to resolve the issue. So whether the team is documenting the results from an impact analysis, doing a root cause analysis, or just they want the full context around a previous decision that was made, this Confluence template ensures all context related to the issue is captured in one place. Now, as you can imagine, with this incredible amount of information on one page, the PIR process becomes incredibly more effective. But there's one more very important step in the incident response process that the SRE team has built right into their workflow. And that's the creation of a status page incident directly from the hot ticket. Maintaining open channels of communication with your customers is vital during downtime. To do this, our SRE team relies on status page. So once someone from an SRE team is ready to make a public-facing update about the downtime or the incident, they can do so in a matter of seconds without leaving the hot ticket. And in the same pattern as the rest of the tools I've just discussed, as soon as a status page incident is created, a link to that incident is then printed back on the hot ticket. Again, we see the power of having all of those things in one place. And just in case anyone in this audience isn't familiar with Status Page, it's the #1 status and communication tool for SaaS companies. It provides the perfect channel to communicate with your customers whenever there's downtime or anything is affecting their service. So while the team is swarming to solve a hot issue, end users are kept in the know every step of the way. After all, when something's on fire and needs to be fixed, the most important thing is that all of your SREs and anyone who can solve the problem is working on solving the problem and not other inbound support requests. So communicating with external stakeholders is very important. If there's one takeaway from our SRE team in their downtime process, it's that the best way to prepare for the unknown is to have a response system in place and ready to go the moment a disaster strikes. And if you're like most Atlassians and you love your weekends, remember, downtime will happen to everyone. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you can escape this fate. In the world of software, it's a fate that we all share. So knowing how to respond and coming up with a system to respond is vital. Secondly, ensure your SREs are focused 100% on the problem at hand and not the process or tools they're going to use to fix the problem. Those should be in place, and those can be automated. Create one single source of truth for everyone swarming on the issue, and keep that system up to date at all times until the incident is resolved. And finally, don't forget that the people affected by downtime are ultimately your end users and customers. Use Status Page to keep your users and customers in the know until your systems are back up and functioning normally. Radio silence during downtime is not a good policy. But our SRE team isn't the only team that's mastered speed. And speed isn't only important during downtime. So for our final story, Jason's going to talk about how one engineering team is moving faster than ever and boosting transparency through bringing dev status directly onto Jira Boards. Jason.
Thanks, Jake. This final story is brought to you by the Fusion team, who have built integrations between Jira Software and developer tools. You might be familiar with Create Branch, Development Panel, Workflow Triggers, and Release Hub. And so this is something that they knew, this domain they know really well, and something they put into Jira to help them run faster. To explain the value of this, I'm going to probably have to back up a little bit and show you how development status can help issue tracking in Jira Software. I'm going to use feature branching from Git to explain this. So when we pick up an issue, the first thing a developer usually does is open a branch or create a branch. They'll then go in and start committing code on that branch, and when they're ready, they'll open up a pull request asking someone in their team to review it. And if that passes, it will then get merged back into master, ideally in a releasable state. So as you can see, as we've moved through this workflow from opening a branch to closing it, there's a lot of status information that's transmitted through here. And we can sort of imply that when an issue is in to do, yet to do, in progress, in review, and when it's done. And so the teams leverage this to overlay it on the board so we can see when cards are potentially in the wrong position to really help us enhance our issues tracking on the Jira Software board. Now they've done this by using JQL. There are expressions here that show you whether they're commits, reviews, pull requests. And what they've done to bring it onto the board is use the custom color cards in Jira Software. I'll expand this so you can have a look at the expressions in more detail. They've set it up so that the card will show up green when we can see all of the pull requests have been merged back in. Gives you a good idea that the card or the status of that issue is done. They've set it up to show up yellow when we can still see open pull requests on branches or the branch. That gives us an idea that the status is actually still in review. Someone's waiting for a pull request to get approved. And then showing up blue if we can see that there are commits on this branch, but nothing further down that branch. We don't see any pull requests or anything going on there, which gives us an idea that code is still being committed and it's likely to be in progress. So this is what it looks like when it's on the board. You'll see on the left-hand side the thin color. And I'm going to pick on this card over here, which is showing up as yellow. Now we said we want yellow to mean there are open pull requests. And you can see how it's gotten past the in review column. So maybe it's in the wrong spot. Now we can click on that, look into the detail of the issue and the development panel, and sure enough, it's showing up 2 pull requests that are open. So it's probably not ready for QA demo, probably needs to go back into the in-review column. But you can see how it helps you catch these things out and where you can focus your time rather than going all over the place and trying to check and second guess what's going on in development status as opposed to issue status. Now, an alternative to card colors, if you're not comfortable with card colors, is you can set up a quick filter using exactly the same JQL expressions I showed you before. And then here you can see if we filter by open PRs, they're all yellow because it's the same expression we used, obviously. But you can see there's a whole bunch of cards that have gotten past in review. And those columns are probably likely not to be ready for QA demo. It's probably going to miss some features because some code's not merged, and they're definitely not done. So you can see how this helps you catch things that might have otherwise gone under the radar and ruin your sprint, or maybe you'd have to fix things on a Friday and keep people back. So really being able to see that gives you the ability to make sure that your cards are in the right spot, and if you can trust the cards in the right spot, the team communicates better, right? There's less people stepping on each other's toes, we're communicating the right status, and ultimately it's about more dev speed. So, hope you've enjoyed the 5 stories Jake and I have brought to you today, but these are just 5 stories from 5 teams. We know that every team is unique and leverages Jira in different ways to suit their needs, customers, the kind of products and services they deliver. And so we'd really love to see and hear stories from your teams, because they'll make a big difference when we're making decisions about how we design, build, and market our products going forward. So if you can, please shoot us a note, some simple bullet points, screenshots, photographs to customer stories at Atlassian.com. It's really your stories that inspire us to get out of bed every day, come in and improve the product. Thank you.
Okay, well,